I kind of prefaced this a little bit whenever we went through our introductions, but I do not like to eat the same thing. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about meal planning and about your meal plan from your coach. Now, you've heard from everyone so far that has talked today about how important a structured meal plan can be, right? It's so important to make sure that we're getting all the macronutrients, all the micronutrients that we need to make sure that we know where our calories are. That's very important when you have a goal, whether that's to build muscle, whether that's to lose fat, whether that's to stay kind of where you are, but improve performance. So it's really important that we have a meal plan. If you have a meal plan, you might have gotten bored with it at some point. So if you're struggling with being bored with your meal plan, find yourself wanting to eat off plan because it's boring and you need some variety, getting the ick. I mean, if you know me, you know I get the ick in a lot of different aspects of my life. But if you are getting the ick from eating the same thing over and over again, or if you're just opting for convenience because you're busy, right? So we just heard about a lot of different things that you can do if you're busy. How can you make it work for you? I get it. I've been there too. I am a bodybuilder. I put the picture in there just so that you could get like a face with the name, which I think you've heard from literally everyone up here so far because y'all know John already and he goes after me. So I am the second from the right in between Alexis and John. And so I get having to eat the same thing over and over again. The only way that I made it through prep, I think personally, is because I changed up my plan. So I didn't change my macros. I didn't change the ingredients that I had, but I did change my meals. So again, we've talked about why we need a meal plan, right? To reduce stress, save money, to build routines, habits, awareness, to improve digestive system. You know, Allie talked about metabolic health and how important it is to make sure that we're getting everything. It's really, really important. But again, I'm Sagittarius, neurodivergent. I need freedom, lots of freedom, and I also need lots of variety. So when you think about meal prepping, I always kind of approach meal prepping as there are two different ways to meal prep. One is to prep individual meals. And that's where, you know, you take all of your ingredients, all of your meals, and you kind of put them together. They're ready to grab and go. Really helpful for people who maybe need to take their lunch places, need to take their meals with them. But it is kind of difficult to separate. You can change up sauces, you can change up seasonings. But a lot of times, like if you make a big pot of something, it's going to be very similar in seasonings. Where if you prep ingredients, that is going to be much easier for you to convert into individual meals. You can have more variety. It still takes a reduced amount of time, right? So like Coach Alex said, he makes his rice in the rice cooker. So if you have cooked rice already, it's much, much easier to make into something else if it's already cooked, where you're not having to cook, 30 grams of rice at a time. Not that it can't be done, because I had to do that in prep when, I only got rice every so often. So you can do it. But it just takes more time. So if you can prep your ingredients, which I kind of have a picture over to the right-hand side here, where you can see where I prep my ingredients and then I use those ingredients for different things. Okay, any questions yet, Coach Alex?
Nope, all good.
Okay, perfect. So when you think about prepping ingredients, just a quick rundown. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but when I start with dry or uncooked ingredients, so I determine the number of servings, say I need 10 servings, then I'm going to cook it all, then I'm going to weigh it all again. If you were on, I don't know that it was our last summit. I think it was a summit before. I did a little presentation on meal prepping and kind of how I do this. I have a whiteboard up here, which has a quote from Coach Melissa today. Am I showing up for myself and acting in a way that shows love, concern, and moving towards my goals? Just in case you needed a reminder. I added that today. But then I put, how many grams it is. That way I know each time I bring out my rice, exactly how many grams per serving of rice it is. Because if you've ever made rice before and you ate before and you ate after, you know that just a little bit of variance in anything environmentally, even maybe if you let it sit a little bit longer, it can change how much it weighs. So again, I talk about that dry erase board, super helpful and important. So moving ingredients to make it feel like a different meal plan. This is what I do. So I am a coach. I have personal training clients. So I have that, but then I also do meal plan restructuring as an additional kind of coaching. So if you're already working with a coach, one of our amazing coaches that we have through VSC, we have a lot of coaches that will coach clients in two realms. Like Melissa, she's my coach. John was my coach, right? John has talked about how Melissa is also his coach, right? And there's lots of moving pieces like that. I do offer meal plan restructuring. So if you have a meal plan from, say, Coach Alex, and you want to hire me to do a meal plan restructure, that is something that you can add as addition or in addition to your meal plan. Coach Alex will not get mad. I am not stealing you. I am just helping in the way that I know how to best. So just wanted to make that clear in case anybody was confused on that. So when you move ingredients around, it can really feel like a completely different meal plan. And I want to make sure, okay. So you all can't see this screen, sorry. Okay. So here what I have done is I basically have the same ingredients on that top line, but I have protein powder, I have spinach, I have soy Krispies, I have fruit, and you can see that it's in different spots. Same thing as the second line. You're going to have, it's basically all of the same ingredients every day, but I've moved things around in order to make it seem like a way different meal plan. So one day I have a smoothie and cookies. One day I have a salad and ice cream. Another day I have salad with some protein in it and then have more ice cream. Ice cream also helped me during prep. So if you have a Ninja Creamy, protein powder and water is the easiest, least ingredient ice cream. I won't say that it tastes the best because it absolutely doesn't, but it does get the job done. Okay. So any questions so far before we start diving into what you really want to see? And that is someone's meal plan that I've taken and completely restructured. Alex, any questions? I'm going to go with no. Okay. Can you all still hear me?
Sorry, yes, I I had my mic hidden, but yes, no questions.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I appreciate you doing that very, very much for me.
Of course.
Okay. So what I do when I go through and restructure a meal plan is the first thing that I do is I look at your meal plan. So you probably, if you're working with a VSC coach already, probably have a meal plan that looks similar to this that you've been sent in MyFitnessPal with all of your macros broken down. Your coach has probably put it into meals for you, right? Giving you like, this is probably what I would eat if I had, all of the foods that you needed, and this is how I would structure it in my day. So I first look at your meal plan, and then what I do is I take your meal plan and I give you two different options. So the first option is going to be me just restructuring your meal plan within your individual meals. So for instance, when I look at this first client, I need to find a way to get flaxseed, protein powder, pumpkin, mango, and oats into something that isn't oatmeal with mangoes on top. And I will say that, I do know a little bit. All of these meal plans that I have here, I know the people and I kind of know how they eat. So I basically know how they already eat these meals. Now, if it were a brand new client that was coming to me and I'm restructuring their meal plan for the first time, that would be something I would do in our meeting is ask, how do you currently eat this? And, because there might be somebody who eats their meal number one in this scenario as a smoothie. Somebody else might eat it as oats with the pumpkin mixed in and the mango on top. Others might, mix it all together. I don't know. So that's where I start. And so then what I do is I say, okay, so I'm going to take each meal and then I'm going to create it in a way that you're not currently eating it, right? Because I don't want to just say, oh, we'll make oats and then put this on top and then there you go, because that's what you're already doing. So that's already an option that you have. Sorry if you can hear that, my ringer is on. So when I went in for this first restructure, I was like, okay, I have been making these pancakes on repeat every single day. So I knew whenever I saw that this client had oats and flaxseed and protein powder, I was like, okay, she's getting my pancakes because I seriously have been making them every single day. If you follow me on Instagram, I have a post about it. I also will be more than happy to share the recipe with you because I get hyper fixated on meals. This is my hyper fixation at the moment. And when Allie had talked about the animal-free egg protein, that makes pancakes just so much better, just FYI. So with this client, I was like, okay, I want to give her something that she's not already doing. So I don't want to just do a bowl of oats. And so what I decided to do for her was actually do pancakes with a compote, but then a protein topping. So when I imagine her making these, I imagine the pancake and then the protein topping kind of going on top of the pancake and then the compote going over the top of it. So I'm going through, and this is kind of where people might say like, oh, well, it shouldn't take you that long. What I do whenever I go through and restructure your meal plan, I give you specific recipes based on your meal plan. So I don't just say, here's a recipe. Now you have to go back and figure out how many grams of whatever you need in order to get one. I do that for you. And then you can kind of see that what I do is I go through the whole entire recipe of how you'll make it as well. So with these pancakes, you take your oats, your veg, your flaxseed, you blend it all up. I typically don't add a lot of other things into your recipes, but I did add baking powder and baking soda. Obviously, I add water as well to recipes when needed. But so you're going to make the pancakes. Then you'll have a separate saucepan where you just take water and mango. I know that this person, she typically uses frozen mango. And so when you kind of cook that down, it makes this syrupy compote. You can also, there are other things that, this client could do. If she said, okay, you know what? Well, which she did say that she loves the compote, by the way. But if she didn't have time maybe to make the compote, then she could just put the mango on top, or maybe she wanted to use fresh mango and she just wanted to put it on top. That's fine too. So then what I had her do was take and I did put also that you mix the veg and the pumpkin together and then put in between the pancakes. You can add water if you need. So that's just kind of an idea of how I structure the meals when you're looking at it. So what I would like to do now is kind of move through these meals, and then I'll explain a little bit more on the next slide about how I rearrange the whole entire day. And for some of you too who are VSC clients, you may notice that there are some similarities in the foods that are on your meal plan and some of the foods that are on these meal plans. That's because if you listen to Coach Alex, right, and Coach Allie, both of them really did a good job in talking about why we need specific ingredients, right? And some of our favorites, I use a lot of this. Like I love Say Grace. I love the Only Bean Pasta. I love PB2. I also love veg protein, right? So a lot of things I also use. So you'll see some similarities with the products, and you may see that in your own meal plans as well. So for meal number 2, this client had pasta sauce, nutritional yeast, which what did we learn about nutritional yeast? That 10 grams satisfies your B12 requirement, right, from Coach Alex. She has zucchini and Say Grace. So for this one, what I did was I gave her some lasagna, or I gave her a lasagna recipe. And something that's important to know with these two is even though I give you this is for one meal for one day, you can easily make this into a meal prep, right? So for lasagna, might be a little bit easier to not make one individual thing of lasagna, but to make 6 servings. So all you have to do is times that by 6 for everything on there. And then you have a meal prep, you cut it into 6s, and then you have your meal prep for the week in a whole entire pan. Make sense? Hopefully can't see comments. So Alex, tell me if somebody says that it doesn't make sense, please.
Oh, everyone's good. Everything makes sense. Thanks,
Okay,
Courtney. Is everyone good? Let us know in the comments.
I'm going to take a drink of my electrolytes while I wait to make sure that it makes sense.
Also, these sound bomb. I should have gave you my meal plan.
Right? I know. I was actually going through some of these and I was like, that sounds so good. Like, I'm going to have to make this.
Totally.
So, lasagna, what I don't know if any of you have ever done it before, but if you take lasagna and use a like peeler, you can make thin slices of lasagna thin slices of zucchini, and you can put that in your lasagna. So then whenever you stack it, it is going to be like a really thin slice. But the way that, zucchini, it does have a lot of fiber in it. So when you pull it apart, it doesn't just rip and tear, right? So I was like, okay. So I decided to do some zucchini. So you take the zucchini and you thinly slice. You can, again, use a peeler. You can also just thinly slice it as well. And then I made a term prosciutto. Don't know if it's actually, that's just what I came up with because it's protein ricotta. So take a little bit of the zucchini, take your hydrated, Say Grace, your 10 grams of nutritional yeast together, and then you pulse it until you get a like paste consistency, right? So you kind of know what ricotta is, and ricotta is in between that like sour cream and I want to say like tofu kind of texture. And something to note too is I don't put in most of my recipes, I don't put spices in there because I think that a lot of spices are to taste. So, I would probably add a bunch of garlic. I know Alex talked about that, about adding like just garlic powder and onion powder to everything because that's what I do too. So I think that you can play around with your spices. So then for the sauce, you take the remainder of the Say Grace and you're going to pulse that into like a crumble mixture. Again, this is going to be your rehydrated Say Grace. You're going to mix it with the sauce, and that kind of makes like a bolognese, pasta sauce with protein. I grew up on pasta sauce with like, crumbles in it, like burger crumbles, but now they're vegan. So then what you're going to do is you're going to layer the sauce. So you do a layer of sauce, you do the prosciutto, the zucchini, and then you just keep layering it until you run out of ingredients. Bake at 350 for 25 minutes. Again, this is where it's probably going to be a lot easier if you make a big pan of it and meal prep that whole entire pan for the week. But you also, if you have any containers like this, your Pyrex, they are typically oven safe. So you could easily make a 1 serving or 2 servings of lasagna in here, which would be really helpful if you're like, I just don't think I can eat lasagna for 6 days. That's fine too. You could just make 2 and then eat half of it for a meal. All right, so the third meal that this client had, she had celery, mixed veggies, peanut butter, and vital wheat gluten. So whenever I was coming up with what she could do for this, I was like, oh, I'm going to have seitan sausages, which I know is a little bit different than, what she typically does. So making seitan sausage, basically what you're going to do is you're going to take 30 grams of the vital wheat gluten, a cup of the mixed veggies, a little bit of peanut butter, and then your celery. And when you blend the celery and the veggies together, you're going to get like a puree because you don't want it to be chunky. You want this to be the binder of the vital wheat gluten. So then you add your fat of the peanut butter, your vital wheat gluten, and then season spices however you want to, for your taste. And again, a lot of times I just kind of say seasons and spices to taste because my taste is probably a lot different than somebody else. Like those jalapeno agro pops, I love. I think they're fantastic. The hotter, the better for me. And then I just basically tell you how to make these sausages. So you can't overwork the dough here. You're going to knead it. You roll it up basically to look like a piece of taffy or like candy because you roll it in foil and then you steam it and then bake for an hour. You can kind of flip it halfway through or you can just steam in an Instapot as well. And then I have a serving of half of the cup of veggies. So she has like you just take half of the veggies and then eat half of the veggies later. So then in meal 5, she had blueberries, cacao powder, yogurt, walnuts, and protein powder. And so I knew that I wanted to do something that was a little bit more than like just a smoothie or just a yogurt bowl, because that's typically what our minds go to with how can I make this as easy as possible? And that's something to kind of keep in mind too. I'm not saying that I make these level of recipes every single time I make a meal. However, I do think that it's nice to have the option. Maybe you have a little extra time. And, sometimes, like, especially if you're on a deficit, you need time to take up sometimes, right? Because you've already gone on your walk, you have already taken your bath, you are like, okay, I have one meal left and I'm hungry and I'm bored. And so I just want to eat off my meal plan. So here is where you can spend a little extra time and create something that tastes like it's not your meal plan. I'm going to go over some testimonials from my clients a little bit later, but I think maybe the best comment that I received was, it feels like I'm eating an off meal plan, but it's actually my plan. And she was talking about, like the day where I took each individual meal and made it exact. And that's what's kind of nice too is, if she had a regular day 1 through 3 and she had a little bit extra time on meal, 5, that's where she can take some time because she doesn't have to say, oh, I really need the walnuts here, but I already, used the walnuts earlier today. It's just taking each individual meal. So meal 5 were mini chocolate pies. So you take, you crush up the blueberries and mix that with the walnuts, a little bit of cacao powder, and some of the protein. And then basically what you do is you take a little container, press it down to make the crust. And then she's going to take some of the cacao powder, the yogurt, the veg, and then make a filling that's going to go on top of the crust. Sometimes I also give some alternatives. So what I did here was I said you could also, instead of using all of the blueberries in the crust, you could use part of the blueberries in the crust and then put part of the blueberries on top as well. So that is what one meal plan looks like when you take each individual meal and then just swap it out for different recipes. Does that make sense to everyone? Is that interesting to anyone? Drop it in the comments or in the chat.
I love it. Carrie said yum. Jackie, I believe, said so many yummy ideas. Coach Maya said pies on plan, greater than everything. Lauren said I understand, I like it, and Donna said definitely informative with 3 hearts. And we got
Cool.
very interesting.
Oh, thank you all so much. Okay, so now we're going to move into what it would look like if you took your whole entire day and you had all of those ingredients, right? So this is, again, option 1 is going to be an open meal where you take all of your ingredients from one meal and use for just a swap. Option 2 is open ingredients. So this is going to be where you could use any ingredients at any time. And what I tried to do here was still give the same amount of meals, because if you're on a meal plan, you typically have them timed out pretty much when you eat those meals. So I would never want to take somebody from 4 meals down to 2 meals just to use all of the ingredients. So with her open day, again, I can take any of those ingredients throughout the whole entire day and pull to create new recipes. So this would really be, this is a really good option, especially like for me, on the weekends. So the weekends, I typically, especially when I was in prep, I had a little bit more time because I wasn't working my full-time job. I didn't have training clients in person. And so I had more time. But again, like I talked about before, sometimes having all that time isn't great if you already have your meals planned, if you already know exactly how you're going to eat everything. So this is where you can kind of get a little bit more creative. So the first thing I had her do was to make blueberry chocolate cookies. And with this, you just take oats, flax, cacao, veg, baking powder, baking soda. And then you're just going to get a cookie dough consistency, and then you're going to bake. So those could be something where you eat in the morning, or maybe you have them as a snack later. And so again, I don't tell you on option 2 when to eat these meals, but I kind of give you a little bit of freedom in, you can kind of have them anywhere. And the second thing I did was create protein roll pizzas. Coach Alex talked about my protein rolls that I make. Yes, I do make them all the time. I love them. But so basically what you're going to do is you're going to take zucchini and make zucchini protein rolls. This again is going to be something that would be helpful to make a bigger batch of, so you could eat 8, because you're going to use multiple ones in this meal plan. So you create your protein roll, and then you're going to create a cheese. And for the cheese, it's going to be yogurt, nutritional yeast, and some seasonings. If you've ever had Miyoko's like pour mozzarella, I'm not going to say that it's the same, because it's not. However, it does fill that void of like wanting some type of cheese on like your pizza, right? So then you're going to take 2 protein rolls, you're going to cut in half. And I like to cut them in half because then you get 4 small pizzas. Now, when you're making your protein rolls, you could also make bigger ones. You could just do 2 if you wanted to as well. I have some, sometimes you can make like a sandwich if you'd rather have a sandwich than like open face pizzas. But then what you're going to do is you're going to take your pasta sauce, a little bit of zucchini. I like to put it in the air fryer so it's kind of crispy. And then you're going to take some of your rehydrated, say, Grace, and then that cheese mixture. And then you can eat as is, or you could also put it in the air fryer, or kind of all put together. And then it will make like the top of the cheese get like a little hard too. Not hard, but, kind of get that like crust on it, I guess, and make it a little bit firmer. So then the third meal I did for her was a peanut sauce stir fry. So you're going to take peanut butter, veg, protein powder, and soy sauce. So it's a little bit sweet, a little salty. And then she's going to take her veggies, her celery, some of the say grace. So you'll see that I split up the say grace between 2 meals here, and then add that peanut butter sauce set aside. And then basically kind of mix it all together. So then you're going to have a peanut sauce stir fry. And then the last thing I did for her was do a mango ice cream. So I know that not everybody has a creamy. So what you can do is you can cut up and freeze mango. And with that frozen mango, when you take it out, you can put it in a food processor. And if you just put it in a food processor, you have to have a pretty good food processor for it to break it down. But because I knew that she had a little bit of yogurt and a little bit of protein powder, when you put that, it makes like a very smooth, if you think like a really smooth, soft serve ice cream is what the consistency ends up coming out once you get it out of the food processor. So this is what I used to do all the time before I had a Ninja Creamy, and then top with walnuts. So those are the exact same ingredients day to day, but 2 completely different recipes here, or 2 completely different days, 8 recipes total. Any questions about either one of the days? Nope. I can't see the chat, so I'm gonna say no, hopefully. If Alex isn't there, can somebody come off of mute and just tell me that there are any questions?
No questions, Courtney. Just a lot of people loving what you're doing right now.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Coach Ali.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I don't know that I'm going to have time to get through all 3 of these, but I will go through the next one. So the next meal plan looked similar, but had some differences. So actually, I'm going to go to client 3 because their meal plan was pretty different, I feel like, in comparison to 1 to 2. And then if we have time, I'll come back and do meal plan 2. So in meal plan 3, this client had a meal. The first meal was rice, protein powder, pumpkin seeds, pure pumpkin, hemp seeds, black sesame seeds, chia seeds, ground flaxseed, and peanut butter. The second meal was pasta, sugar-free sauce, tofu, and aroma blend, which is like a frozen veggie mix from Publix. Meal 3 was tempeh, nutritional yeast, quinoa, and tahini. Meal 4 were blueberries, raspberries, protein powder, or yogurt, and a little bit of nut butter. And then this client actually has extras. So these are items that she automatically just puts somewhere in her meal plan anyway. And so I was able to kind of use those to make into other things because that wasn't necessarily a meal by itself. But she has the veg, greens, almond milk, and Brazil nuts. Anybody want to take a guess on maybe who this is? Because what do we know about if you eat 2 Brazil nuts or 1 large Brazil nut every day?
All the seeds and the nuts might give it away.
I know. I was like, Well, if you didn't know, it's Coach Ali who talked about why seeds and nuts are so important to us.
And in meal 3, I actually had arugula, but I didn't put it because it's like barely anything that, there's barely any calories, so I didn't add it. But there's usually arugula in there.
Yeah, perfect. We can add it in there, I'm sure. Hopefully I had it and we could add it in a good spot. So option 1 for this client, I decided to make a rice pudding with a pumpkin peanut butter swirl with like crunchy topping on top. I know this is similar to what she may have because she likes to do cream of rice a lot of times. So I knew that I didn't want to do cream of rice, which with some clients I might be like, you know what, I'm going to do cream of rice and still do the pumpkin peanut butter swirl with the crunchy topping. But because I knew that she makes cream of rice, I was like, okay, I'm going to change it up for her. So what I did was a rice pudding. So with a rice pudding, well, I guess before that, make the crunchy topping. And this, again, is something where if you're taking 5 grams of pumpkin seed, 5 grams of hemp seeds, 5 grams of sesame seeds, 5 grams of chia seeds, 5 grams of flax seed, it might be a lot easier to make a batch of this and then split it up into, either a container and put how much, each one should weigh on it. Or you could make this individually, right? But it might be easier, again, sometimes taking it and making it into a batch of something. So with the crunchy topping, you took a little bit of pumpkin, the pumpkin seeds, hemp, sesame, and the chia seeds and the flax seed. And then basically what you're doing is you're putting that on the stove and you're just kind of toasting it. So you're letting those seeds really kind of like get some aroma, but then the pumpkin makes it where you have just enough liquid and moisture to make sure that, like the seeds aren't burning either. So you kind of set that aside. And then for your rice pudding, in a saucepan, you're just going to do rice, some of the almond milk, because again, remember, she has her extras that I can use throughout the day. So I took a little bit of almond milk, the rest of the pumpkin, a little bit of spices. Again, this is where if you're feeling like pumpkin pie, you might use it. If you're feeling like cinnamon, you might use it. Maybe you feel like clove. And so you can change it up. But what you're going to do is you're going to simmer that until it's a thicker consistency, but you don't want it super thick because we are going to add protein powder to it. So you can always add water to it later if it's a little bit too thick, but that rice pudding consistency where it's not a thick paste, but it's also not just pouring out like cereal. And then you make a peanut butter swirl. So you take a little bit of the pumpkin, add that with the peanut butter. And then what you're going to do is you're going to have the rice pudding, and then you're going to put that peanut butter pumpkin swirl, and you basically put it in a spiral pattern. So it's a swirl. You can also just drop it in and do like a marble with your knife if you want to do that as well. And then top with the crunchy topping, and then I put the Brazil nut on top of that as well. So meal number 2 is that is pasta, sauce, tofu, and that blend, that Roma blend. So I did protein and veggie fritters with pasta. So to make the fritters, you're going to take that veggie blend, half of the tofu, the tofu that's half a package, and then you're going to make like a puree paste. So you want this again to be kind of thick. Now, if you want a true fritter and a little bit less of like a falafel, what you could do is take part of the veggies and kind of pulse them, but not completely break them down, and then mix it back in, whatever you want to do. Again, these are they're your meals, so you can decide how you want to do them. But basically, you're going to roll them out into little logs and then cut into like gnocchi. So if you know gnocchi, they're just, like little kind of like square-ish things. And again, if you didn't want to make gnocchi, then you could make into patties and just put in the air fryer and make them a little bit bigger. Totally up to you. But then what you're going to do is you're going to serve with part of the veggies and the pasta and the sauce. And again, I said you could put part of the sauce in the mixture. You could also take part of the pasta and make it into like a flour. So put it into a blender or a food processor, make it into flour, and then you could technically like coat or bread the fritters before you baked them. The next meal is going to be tempeh, nutritional yeast, quinoa, and tahini. And I'm sorry, it is like storming outside. So if it gets too loud, let me know and I can shut that window. So I decided to do tempeh mini meatloafs. And again, this is something probably would be a lot easier if you prepped a bigger batch of them. A great thing about these mini meatloafs, you can freeze them as well. So if this is a plan that, she's planning on going to be on a while, maybe she wants to make 6 at a time, and she's like, I don't know that I want to eat these that many days in a row, then she can make them, toss them in the freezer, and then thaw them whenever she's ready to eat them. So basically what you do here, just mix everything together. Mix it into a dough, pop it in some cupcake liners so you don't have to try to dig it out. and bake. That's it. And for the last meal, she has blueberries, raspberries, veg protein, yogurt, and sun butter. So I wanted to do something kind of fun for these. And I know that she's in Florida. It is hot. And I also know that Coach Allie really loves her yogurt bowl at night. That is something, you know, like she looks forward to, she loves. And so I wanted to do something that maybe would make it last a little bit longer too than just a yogurt bowl. So I did superfood popsicles. And so what I had her do was take blueberries, raspberries, some of the protein, the yogurt, and the sun butter. And then, nope, that's just everything. And the greens, and the greens from veg, because again, that's in her extras. And basically you blend until smooth. So you're making, you know, a really thin, because you're making the base of the popsicle. So in popsicle molds, if you don't have a popsicle mold, you can also use jars and either put a fork down in it, put a, you could put a straw. I think I have one. Yeah, you could put a straw like in a jar. If you don't have popsicle molds, because I know not everybody does. Just make sure that, and you should use a spoon and not a fork. I went back and I changed that because you don't want to be eating a popsicle and then have a fork in the middle of it, but you could use a spoon. And so what you're going to do is you evenly distribute that blended mixture into however many popsicles you decide that you want. Again, it might be easy to kind of make these in batches. But if you just want to try them, you could just do one. So depending on how big you want your popsicle to be, you could, make them into 2, make them into 4, make them into 1. And then you're going to take the remaining blueberries, raspberries, and you're just going to drop them, because what they'll do is they'll sink to the bottom of your mixture. And so then whenever you take the popsicle out, then they're going to be at the bottom. So there's going to be like one of the first things that you eat. When you're ready, kind of a tip on getting those out is running them under warm water. And that's going to allow the popsicle to come out a lot easier. So that is her meal option number 1. Alex, how am I doing on time since I didn't actually start on time?
You're good. I think
Okay.
John might come on and whenever you're done. If he comes on earlier, it's totally fine. But do you want to do is 20 minutes good?
Yeah,
Or do you want
good.
Courtney, go ahead and do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're good. Okay. So then option 2 for this individual, again, so when you take your open ingredients, so all of the ingredients you have all day long, and put them into different recipes. So the first recipe that I had for her is a tempeh fried rice. So because I know that the Hue sauce that she really likes is the Thai sweet chili. And so I thought, that might kind of be good. But I also know that the teriyaki one is good as well. So this one is honestly pretty easy. But I mean, I love fried rice. I think most people like fried rice. And so what I did was I took the rice, the vegetables, the tempeh, the tahini, and then I did switch out the sweet Thai chili for teriyaki seasoning here. And then basically whatever other seasoning she wanted, made it into this stir fry. But then I topped with 5 grams of the sesame seeds. So just to give it that, sesame flavor at the end. Second meal was a buffalo mac and cheese. And I know that Coach Alex talked about making a mac and cheese with almond milk and nutritional yeast. That's what I had her do. So cooking the pasta, drain it, and then putting that macaroni and cheese kind of sauce on there, or that cheese sauce on there. But then I had her bake it. So it was more like a baked mac and cheese. And then when it was almost done, pulling it out, putting some hemp seeds on top. And the hemp seeds kind of act as if you've ever had Southern mac and cheese where they put the breadcrumbs on top, same thing, right? So it's just that little kind of toasty topping. And then when the mac and cheese was cooking, Do your tofu in the air fryer, use with Frank's buffalo sauce, which is 0 calories. There are also some pretty good lower calorie ones where, if you have the freedom in your meal plan to add a little bit, you could use, a sauce that maybe has like 10 calories. And I know that Coach Melissa uses one that's not 0 calories, but it's really, really good. I don't know the brand of it, but it's very good. And then again, I said, you could change the flavor of the tofu here, or, change it to like barbecue sauce or something like that if you wanted. And then one thing I did for this client, Coach Allie, I guess we all know that, right? For Coach Allie was, instead of doing 2 completely separate meals, I actually had her make 2 yogurt pies, because I know that in the morning she typically does some type of like fruity thing, and then in the night again she likes her yogurt. But then I was like, I also know that she really likes decadent things too. So what I have are 2 different pies. So she's gonna have a fruit breakfast yogurt pie, and then at night is going to be like a decadent dessert yogurt pie. So again, this is something where it would be easy to prep together, because you can, do it at once and then separate into 2 containers. So for the crust, take chia seeds, flax seeds, a little bit of the pumpkin. You're going to mix that together and kind of set aside. In another bowl, you're going to mix your quinoa, pumpkin seeds, your greens, your veg greens, your protein, pumpkin. And for a smoother crust, you can really, really blend these down. Or for like more of a textured crust, you can just mix. So it's kind of up to you what consistency of your crust you want for that. You could do a combo if you wanted to as well. But basically what you're going to do, you're going to mix that together and then put into 2 meal prep containers. You're going to push it down so it forms that crust at the bottom. For your yogurt pie filling, it's also going to be the same for both pies. And it's going to be yogurt, a little bit of pumpkin, some of the protein, and then almond milk. And basically what you're going to do is you're just going to mix that together until you get like a custardy consistency. You can add a little bit of water here if you feel like it's a little bit too thick, because sometimes when you just add protein powder, to yogurt, it can be thick. Then you're just going to take it in between both of these. For the breakfast, you're going to take your blueberries and your raspberries, put on top. For the decadent one, it's going to take a little bit of the peanut butter, the chopped Brazil nut. Again, you can dollop it in and then use a knife to kind of marble it, just to give it a little bit of like an elevated feel. And then when you're ready to serve, mix the protein powder and a little bit of water. So I make this crumb topping that I use for my veg creamy when I make it. And you don't need very much. I'm talking like 5 grams of veg and like 2 grams of water, because you want it to be like just this little crumble that you put on top. And then use a little bit of sun butter and the crumb, and then a low calorie chocolate sauce that I know that she has. And then it's like this decadent bowl at night. Also know that Coach Allie loves hot chocolate at night. And so what I decided to do for her was, like on this night, like we're just going to make it like a total treat night. And so depending on how much of her almond milk that she uses, because she does it in cups, not in grams. So depending on how much she has left, she can use some of the almond milk instead of water in her nightly cocoa that she has. So again, that's kind of a way that really changing up day to day, but giving just some ways to feel like you're eating a completely different meal plan, even though you're hitting your macros, you are staying with everything that your coach gave you. So you can say, you know what, I was 100% on plan, but I felt like I was eating something that was completely different. Okay, so y'all let me know. I have one more that we can go through, or I can also answer questions, or we could take a little break before John comes on. That's thunder. Sorry, I don't have my microphone on. what do you all want to do? If you can drop it in the chat.
First off, Courtney, I just want to say you are a master magician with food and boring meal plans. Like, I never thought of any of this.
Thank you so
For
much.
real.
I appreciate that so much.
Jackie said keep going, and Michael said one more.
Okay, cool. Then we will do that and do it quickly. I'm so sorry if that's really loud too.
You're
We
good.
can't hear
it.
the thunderstorm.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
you're so good.
okay, perfect. Because it's pretty loud
Also,
here.
Erica said, I generally just use my macros as a guide and eat whatever, usually planning it out the morning of. Is there a problem with that?
That is a great question for your coach. And it also depends on what your goals are, right? So, like for me, I was in competition prep. So that absolutely would not be okay, because you want to make sure that you're eating like the same thing consistently, so that you know that your digestion is exactly as it should be, so you can account for any variables. Now, if you're not in a competition prep and your goals are a little bit more, you don't have a hard deadline, then you might have some flexibility. It just kind of depends on you, your goals, and your coaching style, because you might be someone who maybe that doesn't work for you. You want it to work for you, but maybe it doesn't quite work because you can't quite, get that macro. So that's why, again, having a coach is so important. And, I loved what Chanel said about, coaches need coaches too. And it like, I don't know that I would have hired a coach if I wasn't doing a bodybuilding show, because I'd never done one before. And so I didn't have expertise there. But going through that process, like just me having a coach would have leveled up my game so much. Like even if I wasn't doing a prep. So I definitely coaches need coaches too, for sure. Any other questions?
Not right now. You're good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so client number 2. This client had 4 meals as well. So their first meal is blueberries, veg protein, flaxseed, pumpkin, oatmeal, and yogurt. Second meal, asparagus, just chicken, hummus, and potato. Third meal, spinach, nutritional yeast, the only bean edamame pasta sauce, and Parmesan cheese. And then meal 5 is tofu, stir fry, coconut aminos, and white rice. So for this client, it's funny because I know that she loves her meal 5, which is also, she has made it for me and it's delicious. It is so good. Like, oh, it's so good. And so, I did change it just a little bit. However, sometimes if I get a client and they're like, okay, I do want it restructured. However, I love this meal and I would eat it every single day and I don't want you to change it. I don't have to change it for you, right? Because this is an individualized process too. So for meal 1, I decided to also give her pancakes, but I did pancakes in a little bit different way than I did for client 1, because she had blueberries and instead of mango. And so I feel like, sometimes flavors allow you to do certain things and then doesn't allow you to do certain things. So what I had her do was make my oat pancake mix recipe, which again, I love. I've been making every single day. And then do a pancake swirl. So basically you're mixing your pumpkin and your yogurt and you're kind of setting that aside, because what's going to happen is when you're cooking the pancakes, then you take that swirl and you make a swirl in your pancakes as you're cooking them. And then you will flip over, cook on the other side. You could also, if you didn't want to do the swirl in the pancake, you could add it as in between as well. But then there's a pumpkin topping that goes on top. So this is pumpkin, yogurt, veg. I would probably add some pumpkin pie seasoning to this if it were me. You could also add like a drop or two of stevia if you wanted to as well. And then, like I said, you can either do it and make it in a spiral pattern, or you could, add it in between as well. So meal number 2, which I do know that she has made, and they are buffalo nachos. So one thing I love to do when I make my potatoes, especially for meal prep, is I steam all of my potatoes in the Instapot, and then I put them in the refrigerator, because I don't know about you, but I have tried to make potatoes in the air fryer so many times, and I am way too impatient. They come out and they're like hard in the middle, and probably because I cook them at a higher heat because I want them to get done faster. And so the way I love to do it is to steam all the potatoes, put them in the fridge. Whenever I'm ready for them, get them out, cut them, weigh them, because there's usually only a few grams variance between a raw potato and a steamed potato. Again, I still do whenever I weigh them before, and then I weigh them when they come out, and then I adjust based on what their cooked weight is. But usually there's not much of a variance. And so what I had her do was make her potatoes like that. The good thing too about that is you don't need any oil, because when you cool a potato, the starch and the inside gets a little bit different. And so then when you cook it, it makes this really good crispy outside without having any oil on it. So I had her make her fries, and then shred the just chicken mixed with the buffalo sauce, and then top with the chicken and the hummus. And then I also said, you could make boats if you wanted to. So you could just cut the potatoes, in half, instead of making like fries or, like little, I like to cut them like in circles, like little discs, and make them that way. Yeah. So then meal 3, she has spinach, nutritional yeast, edamame pasta sauce, and Parmesan cheese. This one was a little tough for me, because I'm like, all I could think about was spaghetti, right? So then I was like, how can I make this a little bit different? So I did baked spaghetti. And again, this would be one that would be really good with, making multiple at a time, and then separating the container out. So I just had her cook the spaghetti. I had her add the spinach in, and then add the pasta sauce, and then bake, and then top with Parmesan when it comes out, just for a little bit different, because sometimes you just need a little bit different texture. I also mentioned too that she could do a spinach salad topped with the Parmesan, and then have just the spaghetti and the sauce as well. So a little bit different. And then meal 5, again, is her fried rice meal that I know that she loves. And so I said, I know that you love fried rice, so I'm keeping it in for you. But I offered a little way to change it. So instead of just doing cubes of tofu, if you take a cheese grater, or just a grater, and then you shred your tofu, you can put it in the air fryer or the oven, and it makes like little crispies. It makes it like crispier instead of having blocks of tofu. So I just suggested, like, hey, I know you want to keep your fried rice, but here's kind of maybe another way to change it up with the texture and the tofu a little bit. So that is another one where you take your meals and go for a direct recipe. So last one is taking all of your ingredients and turning them into new recipes. So I was trying to think of different things, especially because some recipes, like I love the oat pancakes. Like, again, I've been making them every single day. And so, that's probably something that I will offer to a lot of people. Now, the toppings might be different. The way I put them together might be a lot different. So I was really trying to think of like, okay, so with this presentation, I know I need it to be different. And so what I decided to do was a tofu with a blueberry compote, and then like an oatmeal crisp to put on top. So for your tofu, basically you just take your tofu and put cinnamon on it instead of salt and pepper, and put it in the air fryer. I don't know if any of you have ever eaten your tofu like that, but even if you just have tofu and maple syrup, if you put cinnamon on your tofu, put it in the air fryer, and then put maple syrup on it, it is so good that way. Like, it's so good, sweet. But then I had her mix a little bit of the veg and yogurt and set aside, because then we're going to make that a blueberry compote. So frozen wild blueberries, I feel like work best for this compote, but you can use any. Just a little bit of water, again, similar to the mango one that we did earlier. And you're going to make a compote out of that. Basically, you're going to turn it on, get it to a high heat, then drop it down to a low heat, let it simmer until it gets a thick paste. And then an oatmeal crisp. So in a pan, we're going to toast the oats, the flax, and the pumpkin. And you can add a little bit of water if you need it. But then basically when you're ready, you're going to do your tofu, that yogurt topping, the blueberry compote, and then the apple crisp on top. So you get a lot of different textures and then different flavors as well. So it's not just, kind of like all together. You're actually getting those layers, and it looks pretty if you, like want to put a picture somewhere too. So the second recipe that I did for her was a protein stir fry, which is different than the stir fry that she usually makes, because this one I had her do like a noodle stir fry. So we're doing veggies, spinach, and then the protein pasta, and then using her coconut aminos that she had from her last meal. So similar in taste, but you're still getting your protein because of that protein pasta. And just changing it up a little bit. So, you're getting kind of like udon noodles vibes, I guess. The next one, I know that she has a creamy. So I was like, okay, I'm definitely programming a creamy in here. So what I did was a pumpkin ice cream. So with her, I did veg and pumpkin. The pumpkin is going to make it creamier. I said, you could add pumpkin pie spice. I've also done like a pumpkin pie latte ice cream before. You can either use decaf coffee, you can use instant or brewed, and basically you put that in your creamy with your protein powder and pumpkin, and it comes out a really nice consistency with that like latte flavor. The next one I was really excited about whenever I actually kind of had started to make this with her meal plan, and then ended up doing a completely new recipe because I wanted to take some of the things from her other meals. And okay, wait, are you still there? Are you all still there? Or did I lose you? Wait.
We're here. I'm here.
Okay. Did you see that?
No, I'm only seeing your screen right now, to be honest. Like, just I see your little square, but I didn't see anything crazy.
No, the power just went out. So I was just like it thundered really bad, and then the power went out. So I was just making sure that I didn't lose internet, which is weird, but I guess I didn't. So, okay.
Gang's all here.
Okay, cool. Thank you all. Sorry if you saw my face if you were watching me. I do not know how to pronounce this. If anyone can help me. They're basically like Italian rice balls. No?
I have no idea.
Okay. I think it's arancini, but I don't know. So we're going to go with that. Okay. But anyway, I was really excited about this because I was like, this is something that's so different. So I had her take a little bit of the rice, the nutritional yeast, salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, and then basically put it in a blender to make a flour consistency, because we're going to do like a breaded rice ball here. And then you're going to take the rest of your rice, hummus, nutritional yeast, spinach, Parmesan, make into like this paste that you can, make into balls. And then you're going to coat with that rice flour, right? The spiced, seasoned rice flour that we made, and then put them in the air fryer. And then you'll serve with the pasta sauce. So I was really excited about that one. One that I was like, oh, that must be so good, and I want to like try it immediately. So then the last thing I did for her was a Southern plate. So I did your potatoes, and then instead of just doing like your cooked potatoes in the air fryer, I actually had her make mashed potatoes, which is where like the Southern kind of came out. I'm from Southern Illinois, but there's a lot of similarities in kind of like our dishes that we have with the South. So if you have never made mashed potatoes with only your potato water, you can do it. And they taste pretty good. I found that out in prep. And so I had her make mashed potatoes. Basically, you just barely cover your water, or you barely cover your potatoes with water, boil them. Save the pasta water, because that starchy water is what's going to help you make that mashed potato consistency. So then you're going to drain, put any spices that you want in there. I had her add a little bit of the yogurt and then the pasta water until you reach that mashed potato consistency. And then serving with asparagus, and then her just chicken. So she can make her just chicken buffalo, which I know that she really likes, or she could do barbecue sauce or anything like that. So those are the meals. Just kind of a little bit of insight to what meal plan restructuring looks like. If you don't know where to start, some action items you can do: take one of your meals, just one, and make a couple of different variances or variations of it. If it feels too daunting, just switch up your sauces or just switch up your protein powder to start. If your plan allows it, sugar-free, fat-free Jell-O pudding mix, 1 tablespoon is 25 calories, I think 4 to 8 carbs. And that can really change like the taste of your like smoothie. I know I do that for some of my clients. That way they can feel like they're having a different smoothie every day. So just take one meal and change a couple of things on it. I did want to share a little bit about client feedback. So again, very excited. I feel like I'm having a free meal, but it's my meal plan. That one, I was like, yes, that's the goal, right? Is to not be bored and feel like, oh, I'm having my off meal plan, when, if you get an off meal plan, because I know that this client specifically, like she's a prep client. And so, she has like off meal plans. And so to have a regular meal feel like that off meal plan is huge. It's incredible and so detailed. I'm going to play around with this for sure. The dessert options are crazy. Thank you. Oh my God, both variations of these are incredible. And so far I've made the buffalo nachos, so good. And this is my favorite method of cooking potatoes. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to share it because I feel like sometimes, for me, I read reviews and I kind of want to know what people think. So yeah, that is where I am. I'm Coach Courtney. You can find me at Vegan Squad Coaching. If you fill out the link, which Alex will drop it in there, to reserve a strategy call, I will be more than happy to meet with you. And again, this is, something that I do have personal training clients, but then I also do plan meal restructuring as well, in addition. So you can always just drop that in the comment too. And then I'm on Instagram, ceos.vegan, which I'm sure y'all have heard of Vegan Squad. And so I'm tagged in some of the stuff. So, okay. Well, now I will stop sharing so I can see the chat. So if there are any questions, I can answer them now. But I don't know if there are.
That was dope. Thanks, Courtney. It was cool to see like the inner workings of your mind. I agree, all this stuff. It's so like cool that you made like every single meal is like, wow, I would never think to use these ingredients this way. So you're freaking queen of meal prep. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think thank you for dropping that link in there too. But yeah, I think that it's cool to be able to change it around. And, for most of us too, we like food, right? I mean, the majority of people like the taste and flavor. And whenever you can change things up, especially if you're staying within your macros, then that just makes it even better, because it feels like, again, an off meal plan. And so you don't want to eat off of your meal plan because it already feels like that. So yeah. Thanks for having me, everyone.